The chandeliers glowed like frozen fire, casting golden light across the banquet hall. Laughter swirled through the air as waiters weaved between tables set for 120 guests. Everyone was here to celebrate Nathan and Isabella Hayes' anniversary, the picture-perfect couple, the envy of their town. At the head table, Nathan stood tall, his champagne glass raised. He loved being the center of attention, loved the applause, loved the spotlight. And tonight, he was in his element. Isabella sat quietly beside him, one hand resting gently on her growing belly. She smiled politely, though her heart pounded against her ribs. "Let's all raise a glass," Nathan boomed, his voice echoing. "To success, to family, and of course, to my beautiful wife." The crowd clapped warmly. Isabella's cheeks flushed, a faint glimmer of pride flickering in her chest. But then Nathan chuckled, leaning into the microphone. "Though honestly, Isabella's role is pretty simple. She's just the baby carrier. I do the real work." The room erupted in awkward laughter. Some guests shifted in their seats, unsure whether to laugh or look away. Isabella froze. The words cut through her like glass. Just the baby carrier. Not a partner, not a woman with dreams, a vessel. For a moment, she considered shrinking back, pretending it didn't hurt. But something inside her stirred. Slowly, Isabella pushed her chair back, the scrape of wood against marble silencing the room. She walked to the stage, heels clicking, and took the microphone from Nathan's hand. Her fingers trembled, but her voice didn't. "Do you all want to know what really happens behind these perfect photos?" The guests leaned in, breath caught in their throats. The silence after Isabella's words was heavier than the crystal chandeliers above. Guests exchanged uneasy glances, wondering if she was joking or about to break down. But Isabella didn't flinch. Her voice steadied as she continued, and the floodgates of her past slowly opened. Isabella Hayes hadn't always been the quiet woman people saw now. Once, she had been the life of every room, a talented interior designer with a small but growing studio in downtown Charleston. She loved colors, patterns, and the way a single sketch could transform a dull room into a place of warmth. She had dreams, not just for herself, but for a life filled with balance, a career, a family, and love that lifted her instead of weighed her down. Then she met Nathan Hayes. Charming, successful, ambitious, he seemed like the man every woman dreamed of. He pursued her relentlessly, showered her with flowers, words, and promises. He told her she was his muse, his queen, the one who completed him. And Isabella, young and hopeful, believed him. In their early days, Nathan encouraged her designs, even boasted to friends about her talent. But slowly, that changed. "Why stress yourself?" he would say, brushing aside her sketches. "I make more than enough for both of us. Focus on the house, the children we'll have. That's where your true value lies." At first, Isabella thought it was love. Sacrifice. A shared dream. She closed her studio, boxed up her design books, and told herself she was building something greater, a family. But Nathan's tone shifted. Encouragement turned to arrogance. "I'm the one keeping this house running," he reminded her whenever she questioned him. "Don't forget, you wouldn't survive without me." Her parents, Robert and Linda Lane, adored Nathan in those days. Robert admired his business drive, Linda praised his polished manners. "He's perfect for you, Isabella," they had said again and again. "Don't ruin this marriage over small disagreements." Their approval only tightened the cage around her. Isabella's best friend, Camila Rhodes, saw more clearly. "He's shrinking you," Camila warned. "You used to light up when you talked about design. Now you barely laugh." Isabella smiled away her friend's concern, but in truth, she felt the same emptiness. She began keeping a journal, late at night when Nathan was asleep. She filled its pages with the things she couldn't say aloud, the sharp sting of his words, the loneliness of being silenced, the dreams she still cradled in secret. Writing was her way of remembering she still existed beyond the role Nathan forced upon her. Over time, the insults grew bolder. At dinners, Nathan would wave off her opinions. "She doesn't understand business," he'd laugh to colleagues. At family gatherings, he praised himself for carrying the load, while Isabella sat silent, swallowing humiliation like bitter wine. And yet, he always knew how to mask his cruelty in public, slipping easily into the role of the doting husband. To outsiders, they were the Hayes couple, successful, beautiful, untouchable. But behind the perfect photographs were slammed doors, cold silences, and cutting remarks. Behind the carefully staged smiles was a woman fighting to remember she was more than a shadow. As Isabella stood with the mic in her hand that night, memories rushed back, the years she had traded her voice for peace, her dreams for Nathan's ego. The guests saw only the shimmer of her dress, the glow of her pregnancy, the picture of devotion. They didn't see the invisible bruises left by words sharper than knives. "Do you want to know what really happens?" she repeated, her voice ringing clearer now. She didn't just mean tonight's party. She meant the countless times Nathan's pride had crushed her spirit. Among the crowd, Camila's eyes glistened with encouragement, silently urging her to keep going. Robert and Linda shifted in their seats, confusion clouding their faces. They had never questioned the marriage, Nathan had charmed them too well. But now, before 120 people, Isabella was ready to strip away the mask Nathan had forced her to wear. The guests waited, breathless, sensing that what came next would shatter the image they had long admired. The crowd remained still, the clinking of glasses and chatter gone. Isabella lowered the microphone for a moment, her fingers brushing against her stomach as if drawing courage from the life within her. Her voice had cracked the flawless image Nathan built, but the truth she carried went far deeper than his arrogant remark. It had begun months earlier. One evening, while tidying Nathan's office, Isabella found a crumpled restaurant receipt tucked between files. 2 entrees, an expensive bottle of wine, and a dessert for 2, yet Nathan had told her he'd been working late. Her stomach tightened, but she said nothing. Instead, she began paying attention. Soon, there were more signs. A faint perfume on his jacket that wasn't hers. Hotel bills slipped into his briefcase. Whispered phone calls cut short when she entered the room. And always the same smirk when she dared to question him. "You're imagining things, Isabella," he'd say. "Pregnancy hormones make women paranoid. Stick to what you do best, carrying kids. Leave the rest to me." The words stung like lashes. But Isabella didn't argue. Not this time. Instead, she began gathering everything. Every receipt. Every text she managed to glimpse. She wrote it all down, building a quiet case while keeping her head bowed. Then came the night she discovered something far darker. Sorting through a pile of mail, Isabella noticed her name on several bank documents she had never signed. At first, she thought it was a mistake. But as she unfolded the pages, her heart froze. Loans. Credit card applications. Debts, all opened under her name, forged with her signature. The betrayal was more than emotional now. Nathan had tied her to his reckless financial games, preparing to let her take the fall if his empire ever collapsed. That night, Isabella sat alone at the dining table, staring at the papers, hands trembling. Her first instinct was to confront him, but she stopped. Nathan thrived on turning arguments against her, twisting blame until she doubted her own mind. No, she couldn't walk into this battle unarmed. She confided in one person, Camila Rhodes, her best friend. Tears streamed down Isabella's cheeks as she laid out the documents. Camila didn't tell her to calm down, didn't excuse Nathan's behavior the way her parents often did. Instead, she squeezed Isabella's hand. "You don't deserve this, Bella. You're stronger than you think. I know someone who can help, Julian Hart. He's a lawyer, and he's different. Honest." Meeting Julian Hart was like stepping into fresh air after years in a suffocating room. Tall, with thoughtful eyes, Julian didn't look at Isabella as if she were fragile or foolish. He listened. Carefully. Respectfully. And when she showed him the forged papers, his jaw tightened. "This isn't just cruelty," he said firmly. "It's fraud. If he's putting debts in your name, you have grounds to protect yourself. Legally and financially." Isabella's hand shook as she held the evidence, but Julian's words planted a seed of strength. For the first time, she realized Nathan wasn't untouchable. Still, she remained quiet. She played her role, smiling at dinners, standing beside Nathan as he paraded their perfect life. All the while, her secret folder of evidence grew thicker. She documented everything, waiting for the right moment. That moment came when Nathan announced their grand anniversary celebration. "It'll be a night to remember," he declared, flashing his signature grin. He saw it as another chance to display his success, his wife, his life. For Isabella, it became something else. A stage. An audience. A chance to finally speak. In the days leading to the party, she rehearsed what she would say in the quiet of her room, her journal pages filled with possible words. Her parents, Robert and Linda Lane, believed Nathan had organized the event to honor her. They never guessed the storm brewing behind her calm smile. On the night of the party, Nathan moved through the crowd like a king, shaking hands, laughing loudly, boasting of business deals. Isabella, dressed in a flowing silver gown, looked serene. But inside, she carried two truths: the child she was protecting, and the story she was about to release. So when Nathan's cruel words echoed, "She's just the baby carrier. I do the real work," Isabella knew the time had come. Now, standing before 120 stunned guests, microphone in hand, her mind returned to those nights of silence, those hidden receipts, those forged signatures. She no longer felt like the quiet woman dismissed in corners. She felt like fire. Her lips parted, her eyes locking onto Nathan's. "You all deserve to know who he really is," Isabella said, her voice low but steady. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Nathan's smirk faltered for the first time. The air in the banquet hall thickened, every whisper swallowed by the weight of Isabella's words. She stood on the stage, her silver gown shimmering under the lights, microphone gripped tightly in her hand. Nathan's smug grin wavered, but he quickly masked it with laughter. "Isabella, darling," he said smoothly, placing an arm around her shoulders. "She's emotional. You all know how pregnancy is. Let's not." She stepped away, his arm sliding off her like poison. "Don't you dare dismiss me," she said, her voice slicing through the murmurs. Gasps rose. Guests leaned forward, riveted. Nathan's jaw clenched. Isabella took a breath, her eyes darting across the room, to her parents, Robert and Linda, sitting stiff with confusion, to Camila, whose gaze burned with encouragement, and finally to Julian Hart, standing at the back, his expression steady, urging her on. She held up a folder she had hidden beneath the table. "You think I'm just a baby carrier? Let's see how much you laugh after this." She opened the folder, pulling out papers with trembling hands but unshakable resolve. "Receipts from dinners and hotels Nathan never told me about. Messages he sent to another woman, bragging about his freedom while I carried his child." She held up a glossy photo of Nathan at a bar, another woman's arms draped around his shoulders. The crowd gasped, murmurs rising like a wave. Nathan's face flushed crimson. "This is ridiculous. Fabricated." But Isabella's voice cut sharper. "And here," she said, slamming down a sheaf of documents onto the podium, "are loan agreements and credit cards, all opened in my name. My signature, forged by his hand." The room erupted. Chairs scraped. Guests whispered furiously. Business partners who moments before had been laughing with Nathan now exchanged looks of disgust. Nathan stormed forward, trying to grab the papers. "You're insane, Isabella," he roared. "This is slander. Everyone knows you're too stupid to handle finances." The words hung in the air like acid. And then a new voice broke through. Calm, authoritative. "That isn't slander. That's fraud." All eyes turned toward the back. Julian Hart had stepped forward, his presence commanding attention. He held up his phone. "These documents, if verified, and I assure you they will be, give Isabella every right to press criminal charges. Forgery. Fraud. Even identity theft." The crowd exploded with chatter. Nathan froze, his eyes widening as the walls of his carefully built kingdom began to crack. "You," he sputtered, pointing at Julian. "Stay out of this. This is family business." Julian's voice remained even. "When you commit crimes, Nathan, it stops being just family business." The guests shifted uneasily, many pulling out their phones, recording every word. Nathan's reputation, his empire, was collapsing in real time. Isabella's mother, Linda Lane, covered her mouth in shock. Robert Lane shook his head, disbelief twisting his features. For years, they had admired Nathan's polish, his charm. Now, that mask was dissolving before their eyes. Nathan lunged toward Isabella, his face contorted with fury. "You think you can ruin me? You're nothing without me." Before he could reach her, several guests, men who had once admired him, stepped forward, blocking his path. Camila rushed closer to Isabella, placing a protective arm around her shoulders. "Enough," Isabella said, her voice shaking but fierce. "You spent years calling me less than I am. Tonight, everyone sees who you really are. Not a provider. Not a husband. A liar. A fraud. And most of all, a coward." The silence that followed was deafening. Nathan, red-faced and trembling, searched the crowd for support, but found only disgust. And then came the final blow. The doors of the hall swung open, and two uniformed officers entered, guided by a guest who had already called them when Isabella revealed the documents. Nathan's bravado cracked. No, this isn't happening," he muttered, backing away as the officers approached. "She's my wife, she can't." "She can," Julian said firmly. "And she just did." As the officers read Nathan his rights, guests whispered, phones recording every moment. The man who had once basked in admiration now stood in disgrace, his wrists cuffed, his empire crumbling. Isabella watched him being led out, her chest heaving, tears threatening but refusing to fall. She had imagined this moment in silence for months, and now, with 120 witnesses, the truth had finally been spoken. The chandeliers still glowed above, but the light no longer shone on Nathan. It belonged to Isabella now. The clamor in the banquet hall lingered long after Nathan was escorted out by the police. Guests whispered in stunned disbelief, some huddled in corners to replay the footage they'd recorded on their phones. Others avoided eye contact altogether, ashamed that they had once laughed at Nathan's cruel joke only minutes earlier. Isabella stood still on the stage, microphone lowered at her side. For the first time in years, her shoulders felt lighter. She wasn't hiding anymore. Camila climbed the steps and hugged her tightly. "You did it, Bella. You spoke the truth." Isabella whispered back, her voice breaking, "I almost stayed silent. But I couldn't let my child grow up thinking strength means suffering quietly." Her parents, Robert and Linda Lane, finally approached. Robert's face was pale, his hands trembling. "Isabella," he said softly, we had no idea." Isabella met his eyes. "You never wanted to see it, Dad. You loved his charm more than my tears." Linda's eyes glistened with guilt. "We thought he was perfect for you. We thought we were guiding you toward stability. But we failed you." She reached for her daughter's hand. "Please, forgive us. From now on, we stand with you." Isabella didn't answer immediately. The years of dismissal weighed heavy in her chest. But she saw the sincerity in her mother's eyes, the regret in her father's. She simply nodded, choosing not to reopen wounds on this night of truth. In the days that followed, Nathan's empire unraveled quickly. His business partners, once eager to be photographed with him, withdrew overnight. Clients canceled contracts. His carefully polished public image collapsed under the weight of scandal, each headline darker than the last. Businessman arrested for fraud and forgery. Wife exposes husband at anniversary party. From power to handcuffs, Nathan Hayes' downfall. The photographs weren't glamorous anymore. They showed a broken man with hollow eyes, avoiding cameras as he was rushed in and out of courtrooms. Isabella watched from a distance, not with bitterness, but with a sense of closure. She didn't need revenge. She only needed freedom, and she finally had it. Meanwhile, her own life began to blossom again. With Julian Hart's guidance, she secured protection against Nathan's debts. Legal doors that once seemed terrifying now became shields in her favor. "You're safer than you think, Isabella," Julian told her one afternoon, laying out signed documents that restored her financial independence. His voice carried both professionalism and warmth. "Nathan can't trap you anymore. You're free to rebuild." And rebuild she did. Isabella dusted off her old sketchbooks, her pencil moving across the pages with a fire she hadn't felt in years. Camila encouraged her to relaunch her interior design studio, helping her spread the word. Within weeks, clients returned, eager to see her unique style again. Her parents, remorseful and eager to make amends, invested in her new studio space. "Not as a way to buy forgiveness," Robert said sincerely, "but as a way to finally support the daughter we should have always believed in." Isabella walked through the empty studio before its reopening, sunlight pouring through the windows onto her designs pinned along the walls. For the first time in years, she felt like herself again. Then came the most important moment, the birth of her child. Labor was long, exhausting, and filled with both fear and hope. But when the nurse finally placed the crying newborn in Isabella's arms, tears streamed freely down her face. "It's a girl," the nurse whispered with a smile. Isabella looked down at the tiny bundle, her heart flooding with emotions she couldn't contain. "My Sophia," she whispered. "You'll never grow up thinking you're less than you are." Linda held her granddaughter tenderly, tears glistening in her eyes. Robert stood nearby, his voice rough as he said, "She's perfect. Just like her mother." Camila brought flowers to the hospital, while Julian quietly stood at the doorway, offering a respectful smile. "You're stronger than most people I've ever met," he told Isabella, his eyes lingering with unspoken admiration. Nathan, from his lonely cell, wrote letters begging for reconciliation. "For the child's sake," he pleaded. "For the family." But Isabella never replied. She had already decided, Sophia would never know the cage she had endured. The man who once mocked her as just a baby carrier now carried nothing but the weight of his own downfall. Isabella, meanwhile, carried hope, dreams, and the radiant light of new beginnings. On the day her studio reopened, Isabella stood before a crowd of supportive friends, family, and clients. With Sophia cradled in her arms and sketches pinned proudly behind her, she cut the ribbon. Applause filled the air. For the first time in years, Isabella wasn't defined by Nathan's words. She wasn't defined by silence or sacrifice. She was defined by her courage, her resilience, and her refusal to bow to cruelty ever again. The gentle hum of laughter filled Isabella's studio as friends admired her designs and clients booked consultations. Sophia's soft cries echoed from the back room where Camila rocked her gently, singing a lullaby. The space that once held nothing but fear and uncertainty was now alive with warmth, color, and new beginnings. Isabella stood near the front window, sunlight spilling across her shoulders. She touched the glass lightly, gazing out at the street where life carried on as though the world hadn't nearly broken her. For a moment, she closed her eyes, letting the memories wash over her, the humiliation at the banquet, the betrayal, the years of silence, the suffocating cage Nathan built around her. But then she remembered the mic in her hand. The strength in her voice. The silence that had broken like glass when she told the truth. That moment changed everything. Julian walked in with flowers, smiling as he placed them on the counter. "Looks like the future is wide open, Isabella," he said warmly. She smiled back. "For the first time it feels like mine." Robert and Linda approached, carrying Sophia. They placed the baby in Isabella's arms, their eyes shining with pride and regret. "We can't undo the past," Linda said softly, "but we'll never let you stand alone again." Isabella nodded, kissing her daughter's forehead. "All that matters is this: she'll grow up knowing her worth. She'll grow up knowing her mother never backed down." Late that night, when the guests had left and Sophia slept peacefully beside her, Isabella sat at her desk. The lamplight fell across her sketchbook as she drew lines for her next project, her pencil moving with quiet confidence. She paused, looked at her daughter, and whispered, "You saved me without even knowing it. You gave me the courage to fight back." Tears blurred her vision, but they weren't tears of pain anymore. They were tears of freedom. Nathan's shadow no longer lingered. His downfall was his own doing. Isabella didn't need revenge, she needed peace, and now she had it. She had her art, her family, her friends, and the unshakable knowledge that she could rise from ashes stronger than before. She thought about the women who might be watching her story someday. Women who felt trapped, silenced, dismissed. Women who carried invisible scars behind perfect smiles. She wanted them to know something very clearly. "You are never just anything," she whispered into the quiet night. "Not just a wife, not just a mother, not just a role someone else assigns you. You are enough. You are more than enough." And as dawn broke over the city, Isabella opened the windows of her studio to let in the fresh morning air. The light touched Sophia's face, and for the first time in years, Isabella felt truly alive. She looked straight ahead, her voice steady, her heart full of hope. "If this story touched you," she said gently, as though speaking directly to the listener, "share it with someone who needs strength today. Because sometimes, the truth we speak can set not just us, but others, free."